Good day to you all. Welcome to the ICT class online. This is particularly for students who, due to one reason or the other, were unable to attend the classes. So, the topic is data and information, and I will try to merge it with another topic, which is information transmission. So, let's quickly check the two. Let's distinguish data, information. Data is just like the raw material, while information is the processed material. If you simulate that with food, then for example, let's use porridge. Data will be the raw yam, while information will be the porridge. If it is a bread, data will be the flour, while the information will be the bread. So let's get it started. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain the relationship between data and information. You should be able to identify sources of data and information, and not only sources alone. You should be able to know the examples of data. Then you should be able to know the types of data. Please don't confuse them. There are three different things: the sources of data, examples of data, and types of data. Let me take it again: sources of data, examples of data, and types of data. So that when they ask you for sources, you will not give them type. When they ask you for type, so then we should be able to describe information transmission and their modes. So I've already defined data for you and the information. That's what we are having here. They are raw facts, events, and activities. So, but on the other hand, information is a processed data, as simple as that. So, if your input is data, definitely, if it undergoes processing, what we have as your output? Please, somebody should say that in the next 20 seconds. The data is input, undergoes processing, then the output should be information, definitely. So let's go to the sources of data. There are two sources of data. Right now you are in secondary school. Last year you were in primary school. So the same thing applies to the sources of data. We have primary source, then we have the secondary source. So primary source of data is the data that you get from the origin. In fact, you get it by yourself from the origin. Just like you stand by the road and you are counting the number of leaves that are falling from a particular tree. If the number you eventually get at the end of a particular period is 16, then that 16 is a raw data. You got it by yourself. If you stand by the corridor and you start watching the number of motorcycles that are entering a particular street, let's say Morocco Road, eventually if the figure you get is 48, then that 48 is a raw data. Is a primary data rather. So primary data, in other words, is those data from the origin, from the source. In fact, if you take a picture of two birds flying, that too is a primary source of data. So as you can see on the slide, primary source, for example, if you are counting the number of cars that are passing your street, or the number of birds flying on a tree, the number of students on a farm, and so on and so forth. Now let's go to the other source of data. The secondary data are the data that has been used before, just directly opposite primary. Secondary has been used before. So any data you see on the internet is not a primary, because somebody has already used it. The one you see in the books, those data you see in the books are secondary data. It has been used before. The one you see in the newspaper, be it Punch, these days, all these newspapers, all these TV stations, all these radio stations, they are secondary data. But the one you get by yourself, or the one that you get direct from the source, they are the primary data. For example, look at this souvenir. Look at the questionnaire rather. I beg your pardon. Questionnaire are ways is an instrument of research. Is a way by which people get information directly from the source. They get information primarily. For example, somebody needs to know the number of students in the Igbobi Junior High School who stay with their parents. The person can just write the question in a paper and come to Igbobi Junior High School directly and give to the student to fill. So you feel if you are living with your parents or not. So at the end of the day, the person will be able, the researcher in this case, mostly university students, they will be able to know, oh, this is the ratio of students who live with their parents and like that. So before we go to the next slides, I hope you are confident about the sources of data, which could be primary if you get it by yourself or from the source. or secondary if it has been used before. So let's go to the examples of data. So before we go to the examples of data, I know that we have different examples. We can have a school data, education data, hospital data, sports data, political data, so on and so forth. The list is actually endless, but let's just take 3 of them, those ones that are directly relevant to you. So let's start with the school data. Of course, I expect you to guess the likely examples of school data. Of course, your name is a good data, your name. The number of students perhaps in the school, like the school population, the classes of the students, J.S.S, the names of teacher, the numbers of teacher in a school, the number of teachers, the number of classrooms. In the Igbobi Junior High School, I think we have 14 classrooms, and 13 of them are currently active. The school buildings, some schools have 4 buildings, some only have 1, it depends. The number of subjects taught. So you can just get many data from the school. So all these things I have mentioned are not limited to them anyway. They are part of a school data. So let's talk about education data. For you to be here, you must have attended a primary school. So it's part of your education data. The date you finished from that school, those things are education data. Secondary school, you already have a secondary school, which is Igbobi Junior High School. Definitely after this, you go to the senior high school. So you have a qualification. Your qualification is FSLC, First School Leaving Certificate. Please, if you don't have it, tell your parents or your guardian to go to your primary school and get a copy for yourself, because you are going to need it in the future. So all these things are part of your education data. Your primary school with date, your secondary school, the date, the qualification. In this case now you still have FSLC. In the next few years you have more qualifications. The language spoken, at least an average student in this school should be able to speak not less than 2 languages. All these are part of your education data. So hospital data, I want you to guess like 3 data you could expect from an hospital. So let's quickly see the name of the patient. In the hospital they don't use customer or client. If you are going there for a medical assistance or help or service, they call you a patient, no matter your status in the society. So the gender is a data. That's why you fill a form. They ask all these things. All these things you fill in a form, they are potential data. Date of birth is a very common data. Even in the school data, date of birth is important. In the education data, date of birth is equally important. Hospital, even in sports data, they always request for the date of birth, which shows that this date of birth is a vital data in many fields. The blood group, the body weight, the temperature of even the nature of the sickness. Is it COVID-19? Is it typhoid or just malaria? All these things constitute a hospital data. All right. So types of data. We have 4 main types of data. Number 1 is the numeric data. The second one, the alphabetic data. The third one is the alphanumeric data, while the fourth one is the symbolic data. Just as the name implies, it is a very simple topic. Numeric data, they are data that are numerals. They consist of numbers, as simple as that. 4, 82, 173, any data that is characterized with numbers, you call them numeric data. On the other hand, alphabetic data are data that are characterized with alphabet, G, Z, and like that. Then alphanumeric, I hope you should be able to match the two. This is when you see alphabet and numbers together. They are not really common like the previous two, but you see them in admission numbers. Actually, in IJHS, the admission number is numeric data, but in some schools, you might see them as admission numbers. You might see them as a lastral number, ID card number, depending on the country. All right. Even I think voter's card is a good example. Most of you, in fact, all of you, none of you should have a voter's card because you are not up to 18 years. But once you are 18 years, when you get your voter's card or national ID card, those cards are always attached to a number, and the number mostly in many countries are alphanumeric, which means you see alphabet in that number, and you see numerals as well. So The last one here, symbolic. Well, symbolic are data that are characterized with symbols. You know, you are familiar with them. For example, if you want to recharge a card, you also need symbolic data in addition to the numeric data, because you need something like hash, star, all those things. You know, so symbols, you know, apostrophe, exclamation mark, currency symbol, and the likes. Those ones constitute a symbolic data. So let's see. Let's really do this exercise. Identify the types of data below. So let's see. A, what kind of data do we have in A? This, what kind of data is this? B, what kind of data is this? C, what kind of data is this? Then D, what kind of data is this? Wow. So 15 seconds. Let's do this. I think this is a very simple exercise. All right. So okay, this is a pound, this is dollar sign, @ sign, star. These are our numerals. This alphabet. This is an alphabet, and while this is a numeral. So let's see. Oh, A, alphanumeric, great. B, alphabetic. All right, I hope we are on the same page. C, numeric data, while the last one is symbolic data. All right, so I think that's as simple as ABC. So information, I think we get a definition at the outset. So let's just discuss quickly the qualities of a good information. You know, this is a common question in Becker. So qualities of a good information. A good information must be accurate, meaning that it must be exact way it is. Accuracy. Accessible, which means you must be able to get it. For example, if you have like 5,000 naira in a bank and you are in the food vendor, you are with the food vendor, you want to buy a food item and you don't have any money on you, it means even though you have money, but you don't have access to that money. So it's more or less like you have money but you cannot use the money. So a good information must be accessible. You must be able to use it when you need it. Again, it must be complete, which means you must not edit it, you must not add or subtract. So when most of you are coming with a report, most of you do a lot of editing. That's why I reject most reports. It must be complete. You must tell us the exact way it is. You must not put your own. You must not, manipulate it. Easy to produce, which means when you get a good information, you should be able to get it across to the next person. Brief, which means it must be concise. It must be short. When the information is too much, then it's no more. It will be boring and easy to understand. The idea is that if you tell me an information, I should get what you are saying. All of you are English speakers. I cannot be giving you information in Spanish, then you cannot. It means you won't be able to even get anything from that. So must be relevant. You are all students. I should not come here and be telling you about APC and PDP. I mean, that's not directly relevant to you. You don't have any business with that for now. Must be secured, yes, or information, especially when you are using the internet. There are some information. There are some of your information that you need to secure. You need to, unauthorized person must not have access to that particular information. So you have to be very careful. Then the next one is verifiable. If an information is good, it means you must be able to check if it is true or not. If it is false or if it is true. Which means when they tell you that information, there should be a way to check the veracity, the truthfulness of that information. Maybe to call the person or to send a message to them to check. If there is no means to do this, then the information is as good as bad. It is not a good information. Information must be timely, which means, for example, if you are to have a meeting tomorrow morning, or perhaps let me say if you are to have a meeting as I'm speaking to you in the next 10 minutes, but you are not informed until 2 days after, until overmorrow, that is 2 days after. How can they tell you such information that you were supposed to have a meeting 2 days before when they are telling you this 2 days after? So that information is not timely. In fact, it's not good. It is useless. Then the last one, up to date. And information must be up to date. That's why whenever you are watching your news, you see something like a breaking news. Up to date is something that is happening now. There are some information that are outdated. They are no more longer useful. So a good information must be relevant to what is actually happening right now. So very good. Let's continue. We have discussed about data and information. So the next thing is to check this information you now have, which is expectedly a good one. How can you now transmit it to another person? I will be using pictures, pictorial representation to show you this so that we will not waste time. So this involves a transfer of information from one person to the other. We are going to look at it in two ways. The ancient or traditional method of transmission. They mean the same thing. Ancient, traditional, or old. They can even use old. So don't be confused when you see that in an exam. Maybe you are expecting traditional, they put old. They mean the same thing actually.